Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this, because today we're unraveling a terrifying aviation mystery from May 3rd, 2026. I mean, what we're looking at here sounds like it was pulled straight out of some big Hollywood action movie, but it was absolutely real. We're talking about a near disaster that pushed the absolute limits of modern aviation tech, pilot skill, and honestly just sheer luck. So buckle up, because we're going to reconstruct exactly what went down in the skies and literally just above the streets of New York. It's an incredible question to think about, right? How does a massive Boeing 767 passenger jet end up colliding with a truck on a public roadway, midair, before it even lands? By plunging you right into that unthinkable moment, we're going to reverse engineer exactly how this whole near disaster happened. Because let's be real, airplanes are meant to hit runways, not commuter traffic. To figure out how this massive flying machine essentially ended up sharing a road with a truck, we really need to break down the mechanics of the approach, the tech guiding the plane, and the crazy environmental factors that turned a totally routine landing into a highly dangerous situation. To really grasp the massive stakes of this incident, let's look at the numbers. We had 231 lives hanging in the balance on this wide-body jet coming in from Italy. That's 218 passengers and 13 crew members on a United Airlines Boeing 767-400. This isn't some small, nimble commuter jet. This is a heavy, wide-body aircraft finishing up a long transatlantic journey to New York Liberty International. And bringing a massive piece of machinery like that safely to the ground, well, it requires absolute precision. As you'll see, the margins for error on this specific day were razor thin. Part 1. Approaching runway 29. Let's rewind a bit from that jaw-dropping impact to really examine the environmental constraints these pilots were dealing with. Normally, Newark Liberty International has two massive parallel runways stretching 10,000 and 11,000 feet. Those are your standard, comfortable, plenty of room landing strips for heavy international flights. But air traffic control cleared this United flight for runway 29, which is a side runway measuring only 6,725 feet long. That is a huge difference in available real estate when you're trying to halt a heavy, wide-body jet. And here's why that matters. A Boeing 767 requires up to 6,000 feet just to stop. That means the pilots were working with a tiny, tiny safety margin of just 700 to 800 extra feet. Think about that for a second. At aviation speeds, 700 feet literally disappears in the blink of an eye. You absolutely have to touch down exactly where you're supposed to. If you float too far down the runway, you risk overrunning the whole thing. And if you come in too short, well, unfortunately, that's exactly the hazard that set the stage for what happened next. Part 2. The RNA navigation system. With a runway this constrained, pilots rely heavily on advanced automated approach technology to guide them down perfectly. Enter RNAV, or area navigation. It basically acts as an invisible highway in the sky. It isn't just about pointing the plane in the right direction. It provides this highly accurate, satellite-based guidance that tells the autopilot exactly how to move laterally, side to side, and vertically, up and down. It's a brilliantly modern system designed to bring an aircraft safely to the runway's threshold. So depending on the automation level the pilots were using, this aircraft was basically flying itself down a perfectly mapped digital funnel right toward runway 29. Part 3. What suddenly went wrong? So here's the absolute crucial point. If the satellite tech is perfectly mapped, and this invisible highway is leading right to the runway, how on earth did they end up hitting a truck? Well, let's walk through the sequence. At first, everything's progressing normally. The plane begins to bank, making its turn to perfectly align with the runway. But here's where the sheer physics of a wide-body jet become a real vulnerability. When a massive plane like a 767 turns, its huge surface area gets exposed. All of a sudden, these strong wind gusts hit different parts of the plane's body at different times. This severe, uneven wind disturbance forced a drastic and unexplained drop in altitude. Before the plane even reached the airport boundary, it dropped incredibly low over a public road. The aircraft's body literally clipped a streetlight, snapped it, and then, boom, the landing gear slammed right into a truck driving below. The aftermath of this is just absolutely stunning. Incredibly, despite the truck being completely destroyed and the terrifying reality of a plane hitting a vehicle midair, the truck driver survived, though he did sustain injuries. But what about the plane? Photographs show these massive scratches on the landing gear wheels from the impact, plus damage to the plane's body from the streetlight. But miraculously, the landing gear held together, the plane just kept its forward momentum over the road, made it to the runway, and somehow executed a safe touchdown. All 218 passengers and 13 crew members walked away completely unharmed. Unbelievable. Part 4. Poppy lights and glide slopes. Now, this whole thing really begs the question of fail-safes. I mean, even with sudden wind disturbances throwing a massive plane around, pilots have highly reliable visual systems right on the ground to prevent them from getting too low. Whenever a commercial plane lands, it has to ride down this invisible slide called a glide slope, which is usually set at a precise 2.8 to 3.5 degree descending angle. If you fly above this glide slope, you might land way too far down the runway, which, remember, was a huge risk here, since runway 29 is so short. But if you drop below that 3-degree slope, you risk not making it to the runway at all, and that results in a catastrophic short landing, exactly like the streetlight and truck collision we just analyzed. To keep an eye on this glide slope visually, pilots use what are called PAPI lights, which sit right next to the runway. It is such a brilliant, foolproof visual system. If the pilots see 4 white lights, they know they're way too high. If they see 2 red and 2 white lights, perfect alignment. They're right in the sweet spot. But if the plane drops below that safe glide slope, they're going to see 4 glaring red warning lights. So in the case of this United flight, when the wind knocked them down and they fell below that safe slope, those pilots should have been staring down at 4 red lights, absolutely screaming at them that they were dangerously low.
Part 5. Safe landing and lessons.
The ongoing investigation is going to have to dive deep into the cockpit data to figure this out. Did the pilots simply not have enough time to manually throttle up and correct their altitude after seeing those red lights? Or did something else entirely grab their attention? You know, this incident eerily echoes the tragic United Airlines crash, where a plane also dropped dangerously below its glide slope, resulting in a devastating impact right before the runway. Thankfully, this United flight ended without any loss of life. But as we wrap up our explainer today, it really leaves us pondering a massive question for the future of aviation. As planes become more and more reliant on automated systems like RNAV, are we putting so much faith in the digital highway that we're losing precious reaction time when Mother Nature throws a curveball? Is our reliance on automated navigation blinding pilots to the most basic, critical visual failsafes right in front of their eyes? Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.